Alright, so it's actually like the middle of May right now, but when you see this, it should be the day of Halloween, and I was making sure we lined up our Halloween videos to where we would end on this point, to where this would be the finale. It did occur to me a little bit where it was like, would it have made more sense if we had done this on, say, like the 23rd, where there was 8 more days to Halloween?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
But it was like, I think I wanted to line them up the way that we did, but yeah. So hey, there's a lot of stuff we could already say about this movie that's already out there, like, oh, it's called Halloween 3 because they wanted to do like an anthology kind of thing, but then that fell through, so they had to bring Michael. Everybody knows the story of why it's called Halloween 3 at this point.
As much as I love anthology movies, though, I kind of wish that would have happened.
Yeah, where we had the Halloween series became a different horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Especially going on this, because this movie's pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's like, I wonder what they would have. Of course, it's written and directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, who's like, a frequent collaborator of Carpenter's back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
He also did the It miniseries. So, yeah. Another thing that kind of goes without saying, but we can kind of talk about in depth, is the fact that there was a long time. I think it still remains, but it's not near what it was. But there was a very long time where, because of what we're talking about, this movie's reputation suffered horribly.
Yeah.
Like, this was seen as one of the worst movies of all time for a very long time.
And I think it's just based on the fact that it wasn't what people thought it was, and they turned on it hard.
Yeah, because when I first saw it, I knew everybody hated it. I knew it was on like IMDb's bottom 100 at the time, which kind of had merit back. This was that long ago that IMDb lists, like, people paid attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it didn't have Michael Myers, and I knew that pissed everybody off. And
well, no, he's in it.
Oh yeah. Good. There's actually one thing about that I wanted to mention, but yeah. But I do remember when I first saw it, I hated it, and I can't remember exactly. It was a very long time ago, so I don't know exactly where my hatred came from, or if it was just that. Because I went in aware. Because you know what this movie's trajectory reminds me of? Is it's a movie that's associated with a very, very big movie. It's seen as technically a sequel, but not really. And everybody hated it because it actually had nothing to do with that other thing. It was nothing like that other thing. But now, as time has gone on, people are starting to appreciate it for what it is. What's that sound like? That sounds like shock treatment to me.
Oh, yeah.
Which I would say is comparable.
Yeah. I just think it's funny that this movie made the bottom 100. This was the worst movie in the franchise. You mean to tell me this was the worst movie in the franchise with Halloween 5 and 6 and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2? This was the worst?
I think Rob Zombie movies in general weren't a thing back when I first saw this.
Mm-hmm.
When it like really I have no idea when the reputation started turning around, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea because I hated it so much, or I thought I hated it so much. I just didn't follow this movie.
What's funny is I think what turned it around is one of the things that you hate the most, and I think it's internet discourse.
Yeah.
Because while it can certainly ruin the reputation of a movie, on the flip side, not nearly as often, but there are instances where internet discourse can revive the reputation of a movie.
Yeah, because it is one of those cases where, like, you could probably say it had a cult following in the way, like, Plan 9 does, or, like, Man at the Hands of Fate does, or Birdemic does, or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, as people watched it more and more, the less ironic that got, and the more it turned into an actual fan base. Mm-hmm. Like, with stuff with, like, Plan 9 and stuff like that, the fan base is clearly still being ironic. But Halloween 3 seems to have had a turnaround enough to where people think it's, would you say genuinely good? Is that too strong?
I enjoy it. It's one of my... I watch it every year.
Yeah.
I think it's also... I think it was... Now looking back on it and seeing what the sequels became, I kind of feel like it was the right call to go in a different direction and to kind of end the Michael Myers story because, 4, 5, and 6 don't make a lick of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see, like, a difference in those franchises, which we've, talked about.
But if they hadn't gone back and retreaded that ground again, would we have the Rob Zombie remakes and the David Gordon Green movies if we hadn't retreaded that ground? Would Michael Myers have broken out like he did with only 2 movies?
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those like butterfly effects.
Yeah. Because I could see maybe, possibly, like, some sort of, like... You know, like, the era where we had, like, reboots that only got 1 movie?
Mm-hmm.
But they were intended to be more franchises. Maybe something like having, like, a Rob Zombie's first movie or David Gordon Green's first movie, but they probably would have stopped those, because both of those got sequels.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's an interesting thing to think about. Because he'd definitely be iconic. I'm sitting here now trying to think of, like, the really iconic horror characters that only had, like, 1 movie or 2 movies.
Well, I guess. I mean, Leatherface's popularity only came from the 1 movie. I didn't know there was a Texas Chainsaw 2 and a Leatherface movie that was Texas Chainsaw 3 till much later.
Yeah. That scene of Leatherface busting through the wall at the radio station, I feel like is a pretty famous Leatherface moment. To where there was a while there where I wasn't sure, like, how many Leatherface movies there were, or, like, which movie was which if I were to see a clip from it, but, yeah, but there's also significantly fewer of those than, say, like, the Halloween franchise or the Nightmare franchise or something. The Friday 13th franchise, certainly.
Yeah, Chucky.
Yeah. God, Chucky's still expanding to this day.
Saw.
Yeah. But, yeah, so talking about how this movie's different, where I was saying how, like, they really did go way off. And you were talking about how you watch it every year, and it does feel like, there's a reason I wanted to have this video go out today, was because, like, it does have this sort of specifically Halloween feel. Not the Halloween franchise or Michael Myers, but Halloween the holiday.
I think it's one of the best Halloween environment movies.
Yeah, especially when we get the montage of like when we see where all the masks are. It starts in Dayton, Ohio for some reason. But when we get the shot, I think it's the Phoenix shot, which is the shot on the poster.
Yeah.
Which is kind of distorted on all the posters. It's a little stretched out, but in the movie it looks normal, and it looks almost Spielberg in that shot.
Yeah, it looks like it kind of reminds me of like some of the shots from E.T.
Yeah, which was the same year as this, which is very interesting. But yeah, talking about the plot of this movie and how it starts and the vibe of it, there's also this opening where it has the feeling of like a paranoid thriller, where we see Ellie's dad being stalked, and he's got the mask, and we know something's up. It's like he just ran out of a Halloween rendition of the China Syndrome or something. And you can see, but also, and it's because we know what we know if we've already seen the movie. You get Terminator vibes when, like, the clones or whatever they are following everybody around.
Yeah. It's almost, I feel like it's almost sci-fi.
Yeah. Like, it's, like, really... I almost say people might argue that until we get, like, at the very last minute it gets supernatural. But, like, the supernatural quality comes in really... Supernatural quality basically comes in as it's ending.
Yeah.
Like, right before it ends. But other than that...
Which is funny, because for most of the movie, the title Season of the Witch makes no damn sense.
Yeah. It always kind of pulled a Book of Shadows, almost.
Yeah, almost.
But another thing that it gives me vibes of is... and it's really funny, because it came right in the middle of the book and the movie. I feel like there's a weird amount of Firestarter in this. Does anybody else get that vibe? Where it's like, Firestarter's book, I think, came out in 80, and then the movie came out in 84. But, like, the first... the deaths in this movie are super brutal. Like, that's another thing where they, like, really upped it. Where it's like, the deaths in the original Halloween aren't gory at all. And the second one upped it a little bit. But this movie's gruesome as fuck.
Yeah.
We see somebody get their head ripped off. There's, was it Marge, the woman that's in, like, the other hotel room that gets, like, her face melted off? And this opening kill, where Ellie's dad gets his skull crushed at the nose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's a scene where in Firestarter where George C. Scott kills Freddie Jones that reminds me of that scene. And just the idea of them being like stalked around by like dark vehicles and that sort of sci-fi vibe you were talking about gives me the Firestarter vibe also. But yeah, and the fact that it basically becomes like a detective movie without detectives when Tom Atkins gets involved, who's just a doctor. That's all he is. But it's like, you know, what Tom Atkins proved in this early part of the 80s is that he was game for anything. Because most people might remember, there's Night of the Creeps, which I highly recommend, which we haven't talked about on this channel yet. We're going to have to do that soon. But
I feel like Movie Club was literally created for you to take movies like that. Like, this hasn't been talked about. We're changing that.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. But like the 2 years before this was The Fog, and like one of the big criticisms about The Fog was the fact that he picks up Jamie Lee Curtis, who's hitchhiking. He's never met her before. And, like before the scene's over, they're in bed together. And it's like she's a hitchhiker they just met, and they're in bed. And it's like, what does Tom Atkins do when he meets Ellie here? They do a little bit of detective work for like half a day, and then they're in bed. And it's like Tom Atkins is just down to fuck. That's just what it is. And yeah, he's a doctor, but it's like, wow, what happened to that guy was really weird. I'm gonna go full fucking detective on this, and we just do that. And it's like, okay, Tom Atkins is game for everything. I'll buy that as this movie's premise.
And he's cheating on his wife through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think they're separated. I think that.
I wonder why.
Yeah, this is not the first time this has happened.
No.
That's why I think the character of his wife is supposed to be like the nagging wife, but it's like maybe she's coming from a real place.
It's Jack Slater's ex-wife.
And it's like maybe Tom Atkins just has a sex addiction. His characters have a sex addiction. That's why. So that's
yeah.
We're gonna.
I like how you corrected yourself there.
Did I?
Yeah, because you said maybe Tom Atkins has a sex addiction. His characters have a sex addiction.
I don't know the dude. I mean,
yeah. Is he's still alive, right?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully we don't bin him off here.
And as far as this having that mystery quality to it, I also like how it has the like the idea of throwing like clues into it, I guess you would say. Like there's that moment where Marge, the girl that gets her face melted off, discovers the trademark, the Silver Shamrock trademark, like off the mask, and she's like, they don't make this very well or something like that. And it's like the way the camera focuses on it so specifically, it's like as a viewer your mind goes, oh, it's a clue, because at this point we still don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the movie keeps us in the dark the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Like all the way up to it actually being supernatural.
Yeah. Like we find the pieces as Tom Atkins and her find them.
Yeah, because the Stonehenge thing is introduced in the opening scene. And then Stonehenge, I don't think ever comes up again until the very end, when Cochran's using it. And the fact that they actually plant these seeds, that these things are important. It's surprisingly competently put together as far as mysteries go. As far as it being like this sort of thriller, do you feel like it still steps it up?
Yeah. I think what really helps too is I think the villain, Cochran, is fantastic.
Yeah, that is Oscar nominee Dan O'Hurley, who also people know from RoboCop. He was like the high up guy.
Yeah.
And man, I love that they gave this part to an Oscar nominee. It's like Tommy Lee Wallace wrote that monologue, and he's like, we gotta really get somebody to do it. And weirdly enough, he got his Oscar nomination for playing Robinson Crusoe in a Louis Buñuel movie, which is really random anyway. But yeah, he really like goes full thespian on these ridiculous monologues.
But I think it just adds to it.
Yeah, it was one of those things where this could like his performance as Cochran probably may also have a lot to do with this movie's status now, as far as people being able to take it seriously enough to see it.
And I don't mean any disrespect by the person that I'm mentioning, But this could have easily been something that was played over the top by somebody like Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
And I love that it's subtle.
Yeah, something Malcolm McDowell would have done for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Which he has talked about before.
Yeah.
There was, my friend was at a Q&A with Malcolm McDowell once, and somebody asked him, like, why did you do Cyborg 3? And I guess Malcolm McDowell got out of his seat, went all the way to the edge of the stage, and then screamed, "It's called a fucking mortgage."
Jeez.
It's like, I could see him doing this for the same reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was something where you really get the sense that Dana Hurley's Cochran is connected to the supernatural. Like, and that's where this is coming from. And like this guy is ready to be like have the power of whatever the fuck it was gonna be.
Dude, he fit right in now.
And as far as it working as like a horror movie, like we were talking about, there's some cases where it could be creepy, but it's so... there's such an absurdity to it and such a blatantness to it. Like, when Cochran's first introduced, it's just his car. And so they're like, oh, there's Mr. Cochran right now. And the car, for no real reason, is creeping down the road really slowly.
Yeah.
It's like the stuntman Mike shots or something. But still, and the idea of like when they're taking Marge out of the motel after her face has melted and she's dead, and they just like throw a rag over her face and like, oh, she'll be fine. We're just gonna helicopter her off to another hospital and she'll be good as new. And it's like, because Cochran's like, you know, I'm in charge of this. And it's like, you're the guy that makes Halloween masks. But okay, you're apparently the richest dude in town and you own the whole place. I'll trust you that you're also the hospital, I guess. Now, mind you, Tom Atkins does see, like, something wrong with this immediately. But still, it's like, the fact that they're so blatant about the cover-up that's going on here. But hey, how do you feel about it as like a horror movie? Like, do you remember any scenes that like genuinely creep you out?
Not in a like scary horror way, but I do think there's a lot of scenes that are unsettling.
Yeah, that's a good word, because that is a good word to describe the scene I was thinking of, which is when they're leaving Cochran's place, when they're leaving like the factory the first time. And, like, the robots or whatever they are starting to, like, close in. And he says something like, that looks exactly like the dude that killed your dad. And it's just... And it's creepy in a sense, but it's also funny because of how blatant it is. Because it's like, that looks just like the guy that killed your dad. And it's one of the robot dudes just, like, literally standing in a doorway in the shadows. Just...
What's funny is that's a line there that's creepy, but in any other movie could be played for comedic effect.
Yeah. Doing it's... If this movie didn't start with the reputation that it had, this movie would have easily gotten a parody. Like, really easily. Like, this could have been, like, one of the main fodder for one of the scary movies.
Yeah.
By the Wayans Brothers.
Yeah.
Or maybe even before that. Maybe in the Leslie Nielsen era.
Maybe.
A spoof of this could have been...
Oh my god, Leslie Nielsen is Cochran.
That's great, because I could see him as Tom Atkins or Cochran.
Yeah.
He'd work either way.
I feel, maybe it's just the airplane in me, but I really feel like Leslie Nielsen would be Cochran and Robert Hayes would be Atkins.
Yeah. But you know what's also great? Is because Creepshow exists, I could also see Leslie Nielsen playing Cochran straight.
Yeah. That's true.
Creepshow also, same year as this, also has Tom Atkins in it.
Yeah.
Just everything's connected. I was going to say that this is brought down by some, you know, even though it's got a better reputation now, it's still got some absurd shit in it. Like,
I love that you went with the word absurd.
Like, and it's just little things. Like, the little things that you would only see, like, in bad movies. Even though most may not consider this a bad movie now. But, like... the moment when... Like the idea of they end up in bed immediately with no lead-in whatsoever. Of course, that could be any action movie from the 80s, too.
It could be any Bond movie.
Yeah. But another scene that comes... Well, it's just a little moment, too. Like, it's very... I guess you could say it's nitpicky, but it's still weird. For a guy that seems as involved in the shady and observant of the shady that's going on around him, it's interesting to me that this guy could approach a homeless man, and this homeless guy could say, "Hey, can I have some of your bottle? I don't have any diseases." And he just starts sharing a bottle with this homeless guy. And it's like, by the way, you're a doctor too. I don't know. And like I said, that's just one of those things that's like just absurd enough to be like, it's not a big deal, but it's enough to go, this would only be in a bad movie. I don't know. But another thing is, do you remember much about the score? Because this is another Carpenter score. He like co-wrote the score, to my understanding. Mm-hmm. And Carpenter scores are really iconic.
Yeah.
Carpenter scores are what make Carpenter movies. Somebody asked us in a Q&A recently, I can't remember how this came up. They were pairing directors with like recent movies, and somebody said, what about John Carpenter's Cocaine Bear? Mm-hmm. And just immediately without thinking, the very first thing I said was, I don't know, but I want to hear the score. The score is fine, and it fits in with Carpenter's other scores. It fits in with other Halloween scores. Mm-hmm. But the thing I wrote down here was, score like a smoke detector. In many cases, you know? Like the scene where like they're all closing in towards the end and they're like dragging Ellie to the factory and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Is where I got the vibe. It was like, this just sounds like a smoke detector going off. Like, and maybe that's, you know, that could be intentional.
Maybe it's meant to be like alarms.
Yeah, it could be, yeah. Because obviously, you know, this is the only time in history that I would like be critical of a Carpenter score, because Carpenter's probably maybe just as effective a composer as he is a director, and I struggle to say that because he's like the horror director. He's like one of the best to ever do it.
Would you say, as far as a director score, right, as director composer, is he stronger at it than Eastwood?
I would say yes, because the only Eastwood score I ever really remember is Mystic Rivers.
Mystic Rivers' score, though, is fantastic.
Yeah. But, like, Carpenter's scores, like, I could tell you what the score to Halloween sounds like. I could tell you what the score to Christine sounds like. I could tell you what the score to Escape from New York sounds like. Mm-hmm. And it's like, they all have the same sound, mm-hmm. but still, they're unique in their own ways.
Yeah.
And they're all great. And iconic in their own way, too. Another thing I was going to bring up was we kind of really went into Cochran, but one moment in particular, because there's another thing about this movie also that stands out. And I guess I can confess something here, because it's something that kind of had to gradually occur to me. I asked you if you found any parts of this movie creepy or scary. There's a whole different level to this. If I were to ask you, is there anything in it you find disturbing?
I think the overall fact that the main targets are kids is pretty disturbing.
Yeah. I think that's another reason I hated this movie when I saw it. Number one, because I was younger, so I felt like, oh my god, it could be me. Mm-hmm. But it's, the scene where we see the mask go into, where we see what we get a taste of it with Marge. Mm-hmm. But we see what the plan is with, was Buddy the kid's name?
I feel like that scene's kind of become iconic now.
Yeah, that scene never left me. And that scene, feeling so disturbed by that scene, I think made me lash out at the movie. Which nowadays I can say, like, I love that the movie, like, showed something fucked up enough. But without feeling like doing it just for the sake of it. Like, it wasn't like, you know, oh, they did something so fucked up and it stuck with me in the way, like, you know, torture porn movies would do it later. Mm. But, like, it's one scene, and it's one scene that's built up to the whole movie. The whole movie is leading to this scene. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it starts with Cochran just saying, okay, roll it. Just so, in such a cold-blooded way. Mm-hmm. Like it's any other task at work.
Yeah, and
like,
he knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, like, to the point that you don't even realize the shit's going down. It sounds like any other order he'd give is just, okay, roll it. Mm-hmm. And then what happens. Mm-hmm. And another thing that's crazy about this movie, and another thing where I may have lashed out at it for being disturbing, is you could say when that scene happens, it's the shit hitting the fan. Mm-hmm. When the shit hits the fan in this movie, it never comes back.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, the shit hits the fan. The shit hits the fan more and more until the movie's over. And what do you think about just how brutal and bleak, so bleak, the last 15 or so minutes of this movie is?
I mean, I think it helps it stand out. I mean, not every movie can end with, good triumphing over evil, because we live in a world that clearly that's not the case.
Yeah, because you could say these movies typically end that. You could say like the Halloween movies or slasher movies or whatever typically end that way, because it always ends with like a cliffhanger, like, oh, the slasher's still alive. But this is, not only is it kids, but it's kids from all over the country. Like, this is it's setting up that this is a mass thing, including
It's essentially Order 66.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's one thing where I was like, maybe that's what's driving Tom Atkins' character to do so much detective work on this, is that he knows the mask is involved some way, and by this point he already knows that his children have those masks. And he's like making the connection of, I wonder if what this guy's thing was, what got this guy killed, could affect my kids in some way. Like, it would seem like an absolute leap, even though it's the truth. But, like I said, maybe if there's just some connection there. And now we know... There is also the scene where he calls his wife, and what basically dooms their children to suffer the same fate as Buddy is that the wife's acting all naggy, where he's saying, like, take the masks away from the kids. They killed Buddy, and all that. And the wife's just like, you're full of shit, fuck off. And she hangs up, probably costing their kids their lives. And it's like, I watch that and I just think, like, maybe just tell her there was a recall. The masks are toxic or something.
Would she still believe him?
Yeah, it's like, maybe not, but he said, get the masks away from the kids for a long time before he said, they killed Buddy. It's like, maybe open with, they killed Buddy.
But like you said, yeah, maybe she wouldn't have believed anything, but,
It just seemed like there was some way to at least save his own kids, but then again, that just adds to the bleakness of it, of all the whole reason we get the montage is, hey, these are all the kids that are about to die when this movie ends.
Yeah.
And God knows what else with Cochran ascending to whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Or descending, whatever. So yeah, I can admire it now that it's so brutal and so bleak. It's like, it is surprising to think, like, I wonder how many people had the reaction I did, where thinking that it was bad, not just because, it wasn't a traditional Halloween movie, or it wasn't a Michael Myers movie, but just lashing out of being so disturbed by the last 20 minutes or so. Because that would happen to me quite a bit as a kid, where if something, like, fucked with me, I'd get, like, mad at it. It's like, oh my god, that's the worst thing ever. But then it's like...
It's like whenever, like, somebody scares you and your first instinct is throw your fist up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happened. This movie popped out, and I just started swinging.
And that's happened to other movies before. I would say that happens to Batman Returns quite a bit.
Yeah, when you talked about the mission being killing children, my first thought was the Penguin.
Yeah.
We're seeing it a little more now. Like, there was a major one in Megan this year. But it's like, it does still seem like a bit of a rarity. Even though movies are getting more ballsy in this sense, it does feel like a rarity to see, like, kids die brutally. Like, another scene that really fucked with me, which we've, talked about, is the Daryl Sabara kill in Rob Zombie's First Halloween. It's still... I can't even watch that scene, but... yeah, but by now you already know what we think of the Rob Zombie movie.
I think what's interesting, too, is there was 2 plans put in place to stop this thing, and neither one of them even really caused a problem at all. Like, when he throws the Silver Shamrock logos into the room, it creates a little chaos, but they get right back on track. And then in the end, when he's calling that station, he's like, take it off the channel, and then it's like, well, every other network's got it.
Yeah, when he throws all the Silver Shamrock stuff down there, Cochran almost seems happy about it.
Yeah. He's almost amused that this effort is being made to try to stop this, because he knows that it's funny, for such a secluded place, and like not much goes on, and they didn't really have any threats they had to worry about. They were pretty prepared for this to go off no matter what.
And like you were saying, it does have this kind of real quality to it, where Cochrane's this really rich and powerful person.
Mm-hmm.
And
what does he want out of it? More power.
And who in the real world would get away with something like this?
Mm-hmm.
The rich and the powerful.
I think this is a movie that if you go in and you're like, it's not Michael Myers, your opinion's going to be one thing. But if you just go in and you're like, this is a separate movie that stands on its own, you're going to come out and say, that was weird, but it wasn't totally terrible.
Yeah, and it feels like, and I've mentioned, like, oh, it feels like Firestarter in some scenes and some tones and like Kill, but the fact that this was 2 years before Firestarter's movie, I feel confident in saying that the movie feels very. Actually, I'm not even hesitating at all. This movie is very original.
I also like, too, we were talking about like the Halloween atmosphere with like the montages of the buying the masks and everything. But I think it also does a really good job of having the town that the Silver Shamrock factory is in feel isolated by the way it's shot and how it's always gloomy. And
it reminds me of Children of the Corn. You can almost expect to hear like the preacher on the radio or something.
Yeah. Oh man, imagine if what was his name? Isaac? Imagine if Isaac worked with Cochrane.
Oh my god. And Malachi was their muscle.
Yeah. Plus they had the clones.
Yeah. That's a lot of firepower. Yeah, and
Nah.
it does seem like contrasting plans though, because Cochrane's plan is to kill the children. Is that his way of sewing up loose ends?
Maybe
It's
so.
like, oh, you've done all my bidding, now you all get masks.
Yeah. Good job, everyone. But no, I think as a movie on its own, I think it's fun. I enjoy it. Or I mean, I don't ironically enjoy it. I legitimately enjoy it.
And there's something about movies like this that really capture that seasonal period. Where it's like, watching this movie, say in May when we're shooting this, and then watching this movie in October are two totally different feelings.
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of a seasonal feeling, and I always appreciate when a movie can capture that.
Whenever I watch this movie, I always want something pumpkin flavored.
Yeah.
Like, it's just how it goes. And this movie's weird to watch in the spring. Like, it's different. Like, I watched The Shining in the summer, but that's just because it's really freaking hot in the summer and The Shining is just coated in snow. Like, that's one thing. But this, it doesn't really work any other time of the year other than October.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be in a Halloween mood, I think, to enjoy it. And I don't mean the movie, I mean the holiday.
Yeah. So, like, put this right up there with, like, Hocus Pocus, and you have a great...
Yeah. Yeah, you could do a double feature like the Drive-In used to do, where it would have, like, a family movie and then a not-so-family movie after the kids have passed out.
Yeah.
You know, put on Hocus Pocus to enjoy while your kids are awake, and then when they pass out, turn on Halloween 3.
Though, obviously, Hocus Pocus can be enjoyed by any age, but...
Yeah.
This, not so much.
Yeah, I wouldn't show this to a kid.
Yeah.
They might not ever trust a Halloween mask again.
Yes. Or they might just get mad at it and lash out at it for years until they realize it's actually not bad.
That's possible, too. But no, I think this movie has a lot working for it that people don't realize. Like I said, I think it's shot pretty well. I think the way it's shot fits the mood and the tone that they're going for. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I had to look at all of them, I would say this is probably the 5th best Halloween movie.
Okay.
5th or 6th, because you got the original. Halloween 2 is pretty good. I like H2O. I like
David Gordon Green's first.
David Gordon Green's first one. So, yeah, it'd probably be those 4 and then Halloween 3.
Nice.
It's probably the order I would go with. And then maybe Rob Zombie's first one after that. Maybe. Either the one, that or... I don't know. The David Gordon Green one's kind of let me down.
Yeah.
They started off so promising.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I still don't think... I've seen worse movies, but
Oh, yeah.
As far as, like, the first movie that David Gordon Green set up, I really thought we were going to do something better.
Yeah.
But, no, I think Halloween 3 is... We'll call it that. I'll put it down. I'll bet it down right now. Halloween 3 is the 5th best Halloween movie. Out of, what, 10 of them? 11? 3 David Gordon Greens, 2 Rob Zombies, 6 originals. So 11.
7 originals. 7 originals, not including this one.
Okay. But if we do include this one because we're ranking it, so this would be what? Number 5 out of 12?
That sounds right.
Not bad. It's in the upper half. Where would you put it?
Probably... There's the first Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
H2O.
Mm-hmm.
David Gordon Green's first one.
Mm-hmm.
Then probably this one.
So this one for you would be 4th.
Because the thing that I really appreciate about this one is the seasonal feel. Like, that goes a long way with me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this isn't so bad. It won't bite. If you watch it, it won't bite. It might melt your face like you're looking at the Ark of the Covenant, but...
Yeah. And something I forgot to mention about Marge's death, too, is not just the face melting, but the bug that crawls out.
Yeah.
It's fucking gnarly.
And not to mention it has one of the catchiest songs in movies.
Yeah. The jingle's iconic.
Yeah, it is. It is. Last year around Halloween, even though I always have my phone on vibrate, I always set a ringtone. Last year it was a Silver Shamrock commercial.
And just how sinister it is that it's so happy, but it's a countdown.
Yeah. It's a countdown to... It's not a countdown... It is a countdown to Halloween, but it's also a countdown to Doomsday.
Yeah.
So.
Alright. So, that wraps up October. So, the next thing you're going to see, unless its release date got pushed, because like I said, we are shooting this in May, it'll be a Speaking Bluntly for Pain Hustlers. And then from then on, it's up to Owen, because I'll have done 2 months worth of videos. That's going to be that. So, if that's it...
That's all I got.
Alright, then
Check out the movie.
Yes, and we're done with October.